So here's a small tip. If you're doing details like this with filler and you're trying to get nice radiuses inside, as you can see the filler's gone hard now, and to start working with it, it's quite tough. When you first work with it, it's like a rock, right? It's quite hard, and so you want to work away at that first with a file like this, and basically take as much of that out there as possible. And the same for these bits on the side. You can use a flat file for that, just taking the worst of it off. But for getting this right on the inside, like I said before, you should never just use your hands to do shape, because shape will bend with your fingers. Fingers are good if you're doing a fluid shape, like an organic shape, from one surface to another. That's fine because you can feel that with your hand. But when you're doing parts like this, you need guides, right? So here, I want this radius to be round, right? So all I've done is I've got a pen and wrapped some sandpaper around the pen. Now, the reason that's useful is because, apart from the fact that I can stick that in there and it will cut an even shape all the way through, like this, right? But I can put that in here like that, and I can actually adjust the diameter of this as I'm working. So if I want to make it a little bit thinner, I can turn it round as I'm working, like that. So I can work away like this and start to take out all these parts here. So like a little bump in there, right? So it wants to be a bit bigger, so I can wind it in like that, right? Put that back in again, and that's quite thick now. So you want to be careful when you're working away in here, you don't take off too many edges from being round. And in the back in there, that's quite tight, so I can roll it back a little bit and reduce the diameter, right? Like that, right? Turn it around, work on this side. Like that. So it's fairly smooth, right? So there's nasty little bits in there which you can get out by winding it back. So you can be able to sort out the shape of that in there better. And it's just about taking your time. When you've got the round that you want, well, that's fairly round in there, right? I can leave that and go back to using this again. Yeah. Bring that to the side. Like that. And you can see here where the filler's gone in and filled that gap, and I'm starting to turn that now into what would be a nice rounded shape. So you can use this filler to fill all the gaps and holes, but you can also use it to start shaping your model as well. So I'm probably going to need to put a little bit more in there now, because there's a gap in there. So I'll just stick a little bit in there and a little bit in there, and then I'm going to have to get the big file back in there and take that edge out and straighten that all the way down. So I'll probably have to put something back in like that and square that off. Yeah, so there we go. So it's getting there, but using filler is quite handy for doing all the parts. And then you want to start planning about how you're going to put the whole thing together. So if you're going to have screens or you're going to have buttons, I think I'm going to stick in the solar panel onto here. I'm going to build that into there. So I'm probably going to want to mark out at some point the line around here where that's going to be, and I'm going to use a Dremel to mill that out. I'll just probably just take a little section out there. The thing is, you've got to remember, when you're making holes and discs for screws, and when you spray it with the primer, it's going to add a couple of mil thickness to it. So if I'm going to cut a hole for this in here, I want to oversize it slightly just to allow for that paint thickness to fill up that gap. Because if I do it exact and then spray it with paint, once you get 2 layers of primer on it and a final coat, that won't fit. So that's something you've got to watch out for, is always slightly oversize your model when you're cutting holes to adjust for the paint. Yeah, so this has probably taken me, I think, from starting of cutting these blocks out yesterday to get to this stage. This has probably took me about 6 hours, 7 hours so far. So it's quite a slow process, which is why you need to crack on really and get these models really good.